Thank you very much for inviting us. It's really nice to be here, and it's really good to support the foundation of this group. We think groups like this are absolutely essential to promote the adoption of QGIS. Without a support community, it might just not happen, and it'll certainly make it a lot easier for all the reasons everyone's been talking about today. Now, onto our title, which was sort of, wasn't really our title. Someone came up with it, I'm not sure who. Actually, we were, and it's 2 minutes after the end of my session anyway now, so off the hook. What I'd really like to talk about is just our experiences with QGIS. Not as a kind of vendor or supplier, really. I'm not here to sell anything. We're just here to talk about QGIS from the way we see it, the way we use it, and the way we've used it on working in projects with our clients, and possibly a little bit about the way we see things moving forwards. I was going to talk for 20 minutes with lots of posh slides about one particular project we did with one client to build them some quite sophisticated tools on the QGIS platform, but actually that client felt they weren't quite ready for that project to be sort of aired in public. So we've come back to just talking about our experiences, really. So because of that, I don't have any live demos to go horribly wrong. I don't even have any slides. This is about as good as it gets. You'll see why later, but if you can just picture a palm-fringed beach with somebody sitting on it using QGIS, picture that in the back of your mind, and you'll see why in a minute. Before kicking off, I realise we haven't actually reviewed why everyone's here. I mean, I assume you're all here because you're either using QGIS a bit or thinking about it. But I was wondering if it might be useful to have a little bit of a show of hands of who's at what stage. So firstly, who's just here because they're not really using QGIS in a production sense, but they're just thinking about whether to do so in the future? Okay, right, okay, so that's a significant contingency in the room. We're just here to look and learn and see whether it's looking viable, looking like a good direction to go in. Who has gone one step beyond that and uses QGIS in their organisation a little bit? Okay, and is that alongside one of the big GIS packages that we all know and love? Yeah, okay. And then who in the room has actually gone hook, line and sinker QGIS and really there's nothing else? Okay, so you guys, and even you guys have said actually you do still have, you said MapInfo and Esri on your desktop, and you've still got Esri desktops. Okay, I thought that was really helpful just to understand. We actually fit quite well within that as well, because we also use QGIS, and we also use MapInfo and ArcGIS. Just a little bit of background. exeGesIS Spatial Data Management, that's us. Oh, and I should have said I'm here with my colleague Carol Bateman, who runs our training programs and manages one of our products for planning, and Lane Skinner, who leads our development team and particularly works with mobile GIS and all things GIS, really, I suppose, and has lots of fancy devices. So exeGesIS, we're an environmental IT and GIS company. Our origins in the murky depths of time were actually with the Brecon Beacons National Park Authority, so it's actually really nice to see them again here at the cutting edge, helping to drive things forward. We're now based over in Talgarth, about 10 miles away. So we produce a handful of data management applications that are kind of, market leading in their areas. Many of you might be familiar with them, like CAMS for rights of way, HBSMR for historic environment records, CMSI for management planning, PACS for planning casework. And we also do custom web and desktop developments. We do training on all the GIS platforms, and we do data capture, and we do just sort of general consultancy services. Mainly we work with local authorities, we work with some central government agencies and some of the major charities, and with all of those we're just trying to help them manage spatial data effectively and find efficient ways of doing their jobs, really. we're quite new to the open source world. None of our own products are, at the moment, open source. So if you look at PAX or something, you know, it's not an open source product. But our products are all for very small community groups, and we run them as community products. So the development is all completely driven and led by the user community. I don't know if there's anyone in the room who's on any of our sort of user groups, but you know, they all meet several times a year. The priorities for what gets developed are all driven by the users. And if we do something nice for one client, it as often as not gets shared around with all of the other ones as well. So although we're not technically an open source license, we run our software on a model that is extremely similar to global open source, but we happen to be working usually with a UK community of sort of like-minded people who use our product. We're very unusual in being both MapInfo and Esri partners. And again, I'm sort of fearing people are going to start saying burn them and things in this room. But actually, this gives us a very nice position in terms of looking at open source, because we're not uniquely tied to either of those two big vendors. We work with them, and most of our clients use those platforms. But you know, both of those are quite pissed off with us already for working with the other one. So you know, when we introduce open source into the mix, it comes very naturally. And what we're always trying to do is find the best match for any given organization's requirements without just necessarily trying to foist one proprietary stack on them. And actually, to be honest, right now, we probably believe that hybrid solutions are pretty good. I'll maybe say a bit more about that. We have used open source GIS tools since I was trying to remember the beginnings, and it's probably 2002 that we started using early versions of Map Server in our web mapping work. Map Server has gone from strength to strength, and we still do use it a lot alongside GeoServer. QGIS, I think, probably only came in to hit any of our desktops in around 2009, 2010. Before that, we saw it as one of a very great number of pretty flaky GIS programs. And then from about 2010, it has suddenly sort of jumped out of the crowd. It's become much more stable and mature as a product. And so I think probably all of us at work probably have QGIS installed now, I would guess. And we now use QGIS in a number of ways. And the first point there is we are just GIS users, just as many of you are as well. And, you know, if a client has given us a shapefile or a tab or something like that, we'll as often as not just crack it open in QGIS to have a look at what we've got as in anything else. If we need to make a quick map, most of us now will use QGIS, as we've seen. Print Compose is a very nice little tool. So it's become part of our standard toolkit, but we don't use it for everything, and we still pay the big bills to, you might be surprised to know that partners of the big companies still have to pay all the big bills. So we still have the support contracts and things with maintenance on Esri and MapInfo products. And right now, we're not thinking of dropping those products at all. I mean, not at all, because when we're doing certain kinds of work in bulk and things, QGIS just isn't quite the best tool. Vector data capture, for example, we had some conversation in this room, I'm sure you nods from the people who do use it. It's just not the most efficient working environment. It's not bad, but it's not the best. If you're georeferencing a load of rasters, for example, you're actually going to be much better off doing that in ArcGIS Desktop than you are in QGIS at the moment. You know, so, and because when we do these kinds of works, we're trying to sort of crack through big volumes for a client who wants it done as efficiently as possible. QGIS is part of our armory, but it's not displacing other tools as well. For more analytical work, QGIS certainly has a part to play, and we've used it on some projects. There's really not much that you can't do with QGIS because of all the integration with graphs, particularly, and other add-ons as well. But again, there are many jobs that we find are actually still done with slightly more efficiently using other tools. So I think as users, we take a very pragmatic approach. We take any individual job, we look at it, we consider what different tools we might use on that project to do for different bits. And more we're finding that QGIS is a good tool for a particular job, and obviously its value for money comes into that equation. So we think that that is the direction of travel. And it's self-constructing, it's self-perpetuating as well. The more people use it and rely on it, the more community there is, the more developers like us will then choose, and Aston will then choose to enhance a given piece of functionality and things. So we do think this is a very mature, viable platform now. But another aspect is that QGIS has become a platform for actually developing applications for clients. So an organization of any sort might come to us because they have some particular business function that needs a bit of spatial, a bit of GIS. It might need some management of some spatial data, some editing of spatial data. It might need a bit of analysis and some visualization, making maps and making reports. And they'll often come to us to make that happen without any particular technology choice in mind. They might come to us and say they want it as a web tool. And actually we might sort of go, really, are you sure it might be better on the desktop, or vice versa? But previously on the desktop, of course, we would have almost always built this on ArcGIS or MapInfo. But nowadays, QGIS has become a viable alternative. And of course, because it's a free platform, or free at least in terms of those upfront licensing costs, the whole total cost of ownership is a different debate really. But because of that upfront saving, if they want the tool on 10 desktops, well, you can do the sums quite quickly. This often gives the client more resources to spend on the bespoke development and the training of the users, and this in turn may mean that the tool is more successful. It might mean that actually it really does benefit their work, their business more, because there's more of a chance of getting it just right and getting the users really successfully trained in using it. And we're I think, seeing that really come to fruition. Of course, we do also offer training courses in QGIS now. Carol can tell you more about that if anyone wants. But sometimes it's just a matter of helping people use some bespoke tool within it that we might have built. I thought it might be interesting to you because other people have covered most of the ground about what's involved with switching to QGIS and things. I thought I would talk about a couple of our development projects actually, because I think they help understand and evaluate the viability of QGIS as a platform for real-world work, not just as a toy that you have on the desk and run back to ArcGIS when things get serious. So I'll talk just about a couple of our development projects. The first one was for some people called the Coral Reef Research Foundation. This is where the Palm Beach comes in. We've never met these guys, but they're always sat on one beach or another or on some boat and making us feel horribly jealous. They used ArcGIS to manage species observations in tropical seas, and then they would give that data to other scientists in kind of Esri personal geodatabases and things like that. They needed some new tools developing, and actually came to us to give them quotes to write the tools in the Esri environment and do exactly what they wanted. And it was only after looking at this for quite a long time and talking to them about their requirements that we sort of said, well, have you even thought about using QGIS? And one thing led to another, and we actually ended up building the tool with a spatial light database and a plug-in toolbar in QGIS to do the very precise operations they needed. And it's been hugely successful. And of course, because of the model, they've been able to basically give that tool and that platform to whoever they like, and the distribution of data to other research scientists has been a lot easier because of that choice, and that's very nice. And you could sort of say, well, commercially, from our point of view, didn't we sort of miss a trick there because suddenly we did one piece of work? But actually, no, it's great. I mean, it's really good. We're seeing much more benefit to them from the work we did, and they're now coming back to us and talking about web enabling it and things, and you know, hopefully some more nice projects will come out of it. Another project was with a company who work in precision agriculture. And again, I'm using examples here that are not from your world, if you like. I imagine most of you are local authority in the room. Is that fair? Or okay, so these are sort of a couple of private sector examples, and to me, actually, those almost tell you more because, sorry, the first one was a charity, but this one that I'm talking about now is a private sector one where the financial consideration was everything. They did not care about the philosophy of open source or any of that. This was a bottom line analysis of whether the tool that was produced for them at the end of this was more efficient for their business and their staff than what they were using before. So basically what they do is they take field observations from farmers' fields, which are measured with instruments like resistivity surveys. They bring those back into the office where they do a sequence of GIS analysis against other data sets, height and things like that. Then they take it back out into the field to do more field work with soil scientists. They bring it back in, they do more GIS analysis, and out at the end drops a little file that you can kind of plug into a tractor, and it'll drive around the field and put the right amounts of seed in the right places, that kind of thing. It's about making agriculture more efficient, use less surplus chemicals, things like that. Now, their old workflow was horrible. They used sort of 3 or 4 different packages, including a system called FarmWorks, various other things. The people doing it had just hundreds of clicks to complete every operation. All their data was in tiny little separate files and silos. It was all separated from their main business database. And that has now become one toolbar in QGIS, which does the whole workflow end to end, even the bit where the soil scientists go out into the field. They've dropped the old, you know, megabucks portable GIS thing they had and are now using, guess what, QGIS out in the field as well, with a nice little custom form to fill in the data. The data all comes back and it syncs in. It's all synchronized with their main SQL Server business database. And, you know, the whole lot's working very nicely for them. Not the end of the story. It's not in full production use yet, but it's all looking very good and looking like QGIS is proving itself as a viable platform for a real-world business solution for a client who's ultimately cost conscious. What about the actual development itself? I mean, how does it compare with knocking up plugins in ArcGIS or MapInfo? Well, some people in the room have said, "Oh, Python, you know, really easy, knock it up in no time. You know, learn it in a weekend." Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, we still think that development in this environment takes a little bit longer than it would on ArcGIS and MapInfo. The documentation for developers is a little bit dicey, like many open source products. It's a bit hit and miss. It's not like the documentation of ArcObjects where you know it's going to be just all there and all true. So sometimes with QGIS, as a developer, you can end up doing quite a few hours of research and digging around a problem before you find the solution. So we still think probably the development tends to take a little bit longer. But you can still achieve a more cost-effective solution for the client when you take into account all the other cost factors. Now, the last development I'd like to mention is our MapLink product. And any of you who are familiar with our kind of main data management applications like PAX or HPSMR will have sort of used MapLink, if you like, because it's the kind of glue that integrates our forms over data systems with GIS. So in MapInfo land, it's the one that kind of puts MapInfo inside a form inside your application and allows you to do all the interactions. In ArcGIS, it's the one that allows you to be looking at a record and say, show me this on the map, or to look at a selection of records and say, map these, or to draw a box around a load of records in the map and say, print me a report of those. All of those operations are basically negotiated through our, what we call MapLink product. And the most important thing it does is it manages multi-user editing, so that even on a kind of basic license level, you get multi-user editing so that any one user can edit the record they're looking at without worrying what, you know, Jimmy over the other side of the office is doing. So that's kind of what MapLink does, but previously it only worked with MapInfo or ArcGIS. There were no other options. As a sort of toolkit, this MapLink thing can be integrated with any .NET or any MS Access application, or indeed other development environments if we write a little wrapper around it. And it's been used by some third-party developers as well as exeGesIS developers. Now, not long ago, people started coming back to us and going, well, what's going to happen if we move to Quantum GIS? So, of course, we looked into this carefully and decided the time was right. So we've now created MapLink for Quantum GIS. So this now means that all of our data management products, the ones that professional officers use for their day-to-day work, can now integrate with Quantum GIS instead of MapInfo or ArcGIS. And perhaps what we also thought was really important, and I remember when we had the design discussions, my colleagues like Carol were saying how important this was. It works with both of the main platforms and QGIS side by side. So you can have one user over there, sort of power user, firing up MapInfo Pro or ArcGIS, and another user who's perhaps not editing so often or something, using Quantum GIS. And we can either have it so that one user can fire up GIS on one screen and ArcGIS on the other from the same application, if you like. So we've kept that very, very free. And the reason we can do that is because actually the majority of the code base for MapLink is actually a common core, which isn't specific to any of the GIS platforms. And then what there is that for ArcGIS, for MapInfo, and for QGIS, there's a kind of plug-in-y bit which does the specific bits appropriate to that technology. Even that bit is quite a complicated bit. I was checking with our lead developer on this yesterday, and there are about 25,000 lines of C++ code just to make the plug-in bit for QGIS MapLink. Yeah, a little bit, yeah. I guess, how long have we been working on QGIS MapLink? Probably 6 months?
Yep, 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months, probably, in there. And we're really, I mean, it's gone out at the moment in a kind of beta capacity with our conservation management system and with our planning system. And we're looking to ship that with the rest of our products in Q1 of 2014. And in the current climate where everyone's trying to reduce their maintenance bills and their upfront licensing costs at the same time as making GIS data more available to more staff, this is proving to be a really popular development and really good timing. We're very, very pleased we've done it. So what about the future? Back to the title. And we firmly do believe that QGIS is becoming a very capable and mature desktop tool. This is particularly so with the release of version 2, and probably will really capitalise when 2-point thingy comes along soon, which just irons off some of the rough edges into 0.0. Where there is a need for desktop GIS with rich editing capabilities, analysis, cartography and visualization, we will absolutely certainly be offering QGIS alongside the other ones, and really just trying to help our clients make informed choices about which are the right platforms or mix of platforms are best for their business purposes. So, I mean, we're not going to be overly evangelical about one or the other. As I said, we're sort of partners and with multiple platforms, and we do believe that QGIS isn't perfect for everything. But we do think that over the next 5 years, say, we will see an increasing number of those organisations and clients choosing to go with QGIS more than they do now. We think it's the direction of travel and that the product will only continue to improve. We shouldn't forget that this is just one part of the big GIS picture, though. You know, QGIS is very versatile. It's got a decent tool set. It's got a powerful development environment. It can bring together a huge range of spatial data sources, but it is only, you know, it's an interface tool, and a lot of the really important work is actually going on behind the scenes with the data stores and the way that data is managed. That's a big topic in its own right, but I think we see that GIS really should be becoming less weird these days. It shouldn't be just something that a few people in a corner have really expensive software licenses to work with. It should be becoming just part of every business application. You know, that the spatial component is just another column in our database of whatever it happens to be, planning applications, bins, lampposts, badger sets, you know, whatever you like. Spatial should be less special and niche and more integrated with everyone's real business workflows and business applications. I think QGIS actually fits very well with that vision, precisely because it's so versatile and obviously because it's free. And in that light, again, I'd just say we're very pleased to support the formation of this group because we think it'll help with the process of making GIS a viable tool for more of you. And also it'll help, never mind the technicals, it'll help build the confidence in the managers of teams, the IT teams and the section managers and things, that this is a sensible and viable choice. If they see that there is a real community with a well-established group who can provide them support with, people like us in the background to provide sort of professional services where you need it. And so that's why we see the value of this group, and we hope it continues. Thank you. That's all.